And, to spin to another of these stories where I believe I'd heard from God, I have shared previously with you guys that I was dyslexic growing up. I didn't know it, but found out probably 15 years ago that I was actually dyslexic. And so dropped out of school in year 11. And then for many years believed I was dumb, had this, continual wave of you're dumb. And having to fight back on that, believing, no, that is actually not what God says about me. That is not my truth, and having to stand on verses to declare the polar opposite. Then one day I'd had this sense, you need to start university. And I was like, that's definitely not a teeny thought. No way. So on the back of that, I remember deciding to apply to do university. I'd applied then for a master's, which was quite hilarious really because I didn't even have an undergraduate. And I remember filling out the form and as it went thinking, that's just really funny. Like I laughed as I pressed the submit button because I thought, what are the chances that a mum is going to be accepted into doing a master's? Well, 2 weeks later, it rolls back that I'd been accepted.
Praise God.
So that was quite unbelievable. So I'm now wading through university for the first time since I dropped out of school in year 11. I only lasted 3 weeks in year 11. And then found myself getting distinctions, and high distinctions, which was extraordinary. But in the midst of that study, I found, because I'm dyslexic, at around lunchtime I needed to have a lay down 20-minute sort of cat nap where I set my timer for 20 minutes and I go into a deep rest, and that's what helps my brain reset, ready to study for the afternoon at university. So, I'm doing what I believed God calling me to do, and that was upskilling, going to university, the crazy, most outrageous, scariest thing. Till that point in my life, that was the scariest thing I'd ever done. Wow. Yeah. Going to university, having been a school dropout, dyslexic, struggled terribly with my learning. And then as I went to bed this day in the midst of studying what was a gruelingly difficult subject, accounting.
Oh, yeah.
Horrendous.
I'm with you.
I was just about to be asleep, laying on my bed into that deep rest of the 20 minutes, and I heard the words running through my head very loudly, "You're ready to be mayor. You're ready to be mayor."
Wow.
And it just was so loud that I sat bolt upright and immediately my chest started beating. I was absolutely petrified and I was like, Lord, that had to have been you, because I would never think that. I had no aspirations to be the mayor. It was not a dream of my heart. Sure, if I was a little girl and thought there was ever a chance one day to be the mayor of my city, it would have been the dream I would have dreamt.
Yeah.
But never would I have in a million years thought myself capable of that. But knowing that I'd heard something really, it wasn't audible, it was my own thoughts in my head, but so distinctly strong and twice that it was, I sat bolt upright, seriously. I couldn't have denied that moment. And so I remember later that night laying in bed on the side then of Mount Roland, which is in the middle of Tasmania. I was laying in this beautiful place called the Hut and in a dark room, and I was petrified. My chest was just spinning with absolute fear. God, I just don't want to be the mayor. I'm so scared to do that. That would be horrendously scary. And I heard the words, "A woman now stands in the place a girl once stood."
Wow.
Now, that's not something I'd concoct.
Yeah.
So I believed that to be God speaking through my thoughts, that a woman now stands in the place a girl once stood. And then he said, "And what's your verse this week, Teeny?" It was sort of that question to me, what's your verse this week? Well, 3 days earlier, a team that I meet with once a month, I'd been in local government for 8 years at this point, almost 8 years. They met with me and they said, "Teeny, God's given us a verse for you this week." And they'd never said this in 8 years, but they said, "Have I not commanded you, be bold and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you and will be with you wherever you go." So when God then asks me that question, what is the verse this week? I replay that in my mind and I'm like, immediately the fear just went poof, out of my chest. And I knew that God had a plan. And so thus begun the mum who became a mayor.